Usually I'm away.
The big race today in Warren County. So I think we got 10 or 12 towns for voting to select it.
How do you do it in Washington County?
Are we live? Okay, we're live.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Mike Wild,
Here.
Dan Bruno,
Here.
Craig Leggett.
Here.
Dave O'Brien.
Here.
We have a quorum, we have 4 out of 5.
Okay. This biggest thing is Canal Side Master Plan update. We got Bob Holmes and Chuck involved in it, Dan involved in it, so who wants to take the lead?
We've been reviewing Labella's proposal, technical services change order number 4 for the stormwater, water, potable water, wastewater design to facilitate installation of utilities to the site to make it more marketable and desirable, etc. And we are meeting with Labella this afternoon at 1 p.m. at their office to review their proposal. We have put together a series of questions, and I believe Mr. Barton has forwarded those on to them. I'll just say a couple things and then I'm done. Dave, in response to your question on my comments on number 3, said why should more work be completed before finalizing the proposal? I put that in there primarily to get people's attention. And the reason, and I know you're absolutely correct, that's going to delay things, blah, blah, blah. But my point in highlighting that is that work, in my book, should have been done, a lot of it. And, here we are considering this, they still haven't completed those number of items. I could look them up, but I won't bother.
Were they
So-
fundamental items that should have been done?
Yeah, I can give them to you.
No, don't.
But they're, yeah, such as part of it concerns the stormwater mitigation. And that's been an ongoing thing, and they keep throwing this stuff out. For instance, I'll quote Paul Guillet here on December 12th, says, "We have not included full design of the separation project in the proposal. This is due to the uncertainties associated with the need for and nature and need for separation project, which ultimately make it difficult to scope. In addition, we are already running up against the $600,000 limit, even without it. And I say to that quite bluntly, bullshit. $600,000, you haven't done that, and you're up against $600,000 for this scope here. No, I disagree. That thing is worth about half of that. There should be more than enough money in there. So we're going on that.
Didn't you get a price quote? Didn't you get a price quote? Didn't you get a quote of what you would get delivered to you?
Yeah, and that's what we have issues with. A lot of those items, some of them are redundant, some of them are overpriced. So that's what we're going to sit down with them this afternoon and discuss and go through that, because we need to shave an awful lot off that $600,000 tab that they're looking at, which, as he says, even without the stormwater separation, we're up against that number, and I just completely disagree with that.
Go ahead, Mr. Chairman.
No, go ahead.
The proposal is a 40-page proposal. It's quite comprehensive, and there are some parts of it that we like and some parts that we believe there need to be some modifications. We've had several meetings on it, and after the meetings, we consolidated to a memo back to them with 13 points of discussion that will occur today at 1 o'clock. So this is an evolution. Their first proposal is a starting point, but we all believe there needs to be much further modification, and including some of the examples that Dan has highlighted. So more to come after today's meeting at 1 o'clock. Labella has presented good spirit, and this is a project that's not overly complex, but when you factor in not only technical issues, but jurisdictional issues, utility issues, and regulatory issues, all of a sudden you've got this mass, and we're trying to shape it into a palatable master planning exercise. So it's a work in progress.
The I think that partly they were sort of hoping we get the congressional funding for FE1A, which would take care of the stormwater separation. I think the real issue is that we started with them 8 months ago. And their key player dropped out. John Doty dropped out when essentially started his own firm. Or was taking over another firm. And so they lost a key player there. But I think the other factor is they've also been acquired by a larger company, Chazon to Labella. And we're not quite sure how that mix takes place and what it's going to mean for Glenn Bell's office, but they all along have assured us we're going to get this all done by September, because that's when our MBRC funding has to be spent out by. So I was really surprised water separations was pulled out. I'm really concerned about that, but like you said, there's a lot of duplication there, and I'll let Bob, who spent a lot of time on it too, chime in. I think that one of the things that we need to do along this line is that Chuck talked about yesterday, is make sure that we have advisory role from Jared Engineering or whatever their name's going to be to help guide us through this, because we're not all experts in this.
And before Bob speaks, the point about the stormwater offset, we've requested be put in the proposal. So they said, no, there's uncertainty. And we said, no, you need to put it back in. So again, this will be another one. This is one of those 13 topics that we'll be talking with them about today.
And then just to remind me on that stormwater separation is needed for the overall capacity for
the approval for the sewer. That's correct.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's a couple other projects that can look to be funded that would take care of it, but we can't count on each one getting funded. We still have to plan for it.
I think part of that on the wastewater also is, yes, we need the offset, but what was the capacity there already? That, to Dan's point, that why was that not discussed, or that knowledge, why have they not gained that knowledge thus far from the prior work that's been authorized by the IDA? And the same effect on the water supply. It seems as though right now that there's no acknowledgement that there is water service to the park. And there's a big nugget of expense in their proposal for bringing water service to the park that already exists. So that's one of Chuck's talking points. And this is also kind of a carryover of this redundancy, is why is some of this not previously known? And unfortunately, that may be due to the transition with, as the chairman pointed out, from Chazon to Labella, and then having a key player also depart the firm.
Well,
So hopefully we're going to have a better answer on that today.
I sent them all the water diagrams. I'm sure they had it before. I mean, it was even in this. It was even in the Weston Sampson.
That's right.
Weston Sampson study about the water. That there was an 8-inch line coming to the border of the property. Now, the other thing we have to look at is, do we assess this and say, hey, listen, we've achieved the goal of getting water to the property, 8-inch line, which should be enough for most users. Should we wait for the user, for a potential user to come in, and then it'd be their responsibility from bring it from the border to their location? Because the location, they may tear both buildings down, or have another site, another area in the site they're going to use. That, you know, if we extend the water lines to where it is, we may miss the boat, but also there's still a 6-inch lines in there to serving most of the buildings over there. So I'm not sure they did their homework on it, they missed it, and there I go.
So I'm a little curious though, what did the water facility do for stormwater? Because I'm wondering if we can be grandfathered in for part of this, and it's not so complicated.
It's not about the stormwater from the site. It's about us asking for more sewer capacity, and the DEC saying you have to do an offset for stormwater mitigation elsewhere in the area. So
DEC looks at it and says, hey, here's a treatment. And it's treating X number of million gallons per day. And we know that a portion of that is unnecessary. It's stormwater, it's infiltration, stuff like that.
Okay.
So they come to potential new users like us and they say, okay, here's what we want you to do. In order to get 100,000 gallons capacity from this plant, you gotta take 400,000 gallons of that stormwater that doesn't need to be treated out of there. That's it in a nutshell. So we need to mitigate, in order to get 100, that's 4 to 1.
There's a lot of stormwater and.
So it's not our
infiltration.
site, it's not our site across the system.
Correct. We have stormwater mitigation, the stormwater is, we have stormwater ponds there, and there is a pipe that goes in the canal for just stormwater.
The stormwater system there actually is very good.
It's
Not much.
I would imagine, all right, I forgot
So,
the fact that it's the overall sewer system, right?
Yeah, so I'll just offer that I think we need to get through this working meeting today. Being cautiously optimistic, hopefully they'll listen and modify and we'll be off to the races. So it is really more to come. And this meeting today is very important.
Now, the one thing Weston Sampson did point out was that, and this came from, I think, Yale Village also, is their water system has enough capacity. But it may be the fact that there may need to be a tank put in there. So, I'm trying to remember, so that it may not be able to produce a constant flow. We've got a tank, there's a backup system, so that's part of the thing Weston Sampson pointed out. Now, not sure that having that tank or the location of the tank would affect the rest of the system there.
You don't even know if you needed it.
This is part of the flow studies that has either been previously authorized or is part of this. There's a lot of initial information that I think needs to be collected and finalized and presented to the IDA board that can either allow the board as a general to tailor or focus the project in one direction or the other. But this is information that's absolutely vital. I mean, the point is a tank needed. It sounds like we have the daily capacity in the existing infrastructure. It comes down to the peak demand of water depending on a potential user or, a potential tenant of the park.
Right.
Just one other thought, is there any opportunity to get a second source to help with some of this work if without it's revisiting?
This is fairly complex. There's a lot of interrelation between everything going on. So if we separate it, it could actually cause more complexity. I think one firm makes a lot of sense, but they have to get their arms around all the various issues and then orchestrate appropriately. And remember, this is not even electricity and gas. This is hitting water, sewer, and stormwater offset. Behind it, we have electricity and gas to deal with too. So, and then you get the moving parts of who will be the potential tenant and what will their needs, because different tenants are gonna have different needs. So there's some moving parts on this. I think offering another firm in the mix will actually probably make it more difficult to execute, quite honestly.
And there is places where they subcontracted some of their tasks, so to speak.
Like archaeological and a few other areas.
So, but we should get more today and hopefully make the steps forward easier from today. And to answer your question, there are two ways to go out for proposals. One is request for qualification, one's request for proposal. When you're looking for engineering, some professional services, you want to go to RFP because then you're almost frozen to the lowest bid. And it may not be the qualified company that gets it. So. Anything else to add, Bob?
I think that covers the moment. We'll certainly have more to report this afternoon after a meeting.
Okay.
Dave, you just went about request for proposals. The way I understand request for proposal, it's not a bid, it's whoever fits what you want done. And you pick the one that fits your need best, not the lowest bid.
That's the RFQ.
No, request for proposal, same thing.
Yeah,
Depending on how the RFP is written,
Right.
right.
we need to be careful on that, best value. Yeah,
But it's a different than a bid. A bid, you really get tied to the lowest or to the best value if you have that policy. But yeah, with the proposal, it's whatever fits you best. But I like what Chuck said. We do need to be cautiously optimistic, but we probably also need to be aware that, maybe we have to switch horses if they can't do what we need. It has to be done right either way.
Yep. Okay, moving forward, UTEP update, we sent out the UTEP review by municipality and taxing jurisdictions. We have some feedback. Most of the feedback we've gotten, all the feedback we've gotten so far is really no comment, so that's moving forward. We did get a request to extend the time because of the holiday season. We did extend the time till the 1st of March. The second thing we did was a couple of people asked for, how can I reference what changed, what not changed? So we did send out, or we didn't send out, we sent a letter saying, here's the extension date, here's a link to where you can find the highlighted proposal, because it's 100 pages, we only copy 100 pages for 20, 30 some odd municipalities and send them out. So we did that, so we do have the capability to check and see what's changed.
So that should be in my email somewhere.
Should be in your mail. Snail mail.
Well, you've already reviewed it, so you're okay.
I was got this town and county.
Right, no, understood.
Can I interject here? For any of the supervisors that are actually on the board, I didn't send any to you all because
Okay.
you're adept in what's going on.
Okay.
I can send you a copy if you'd like. I mean, we've been talking about it for months.
Because my first thought is
Just
just
email.
should the town board.
Dave is suggesting we just go ahead and
Just
email.
email it to them.
Yeah, of course, I was going to, yes. Okay. Got it.
All right, I skipped approval minutes of the meeting December 7th. Can I have a motion to accept the meetings as mailed? Motion by Dan, do I have a second? Craig? Any omissions or corrections? All in favor? Carried. Anything else on the UTF? Delineation update. Mr. Connell has retired effective December 31st. His staff can tell us what wonderful things we've had from John Connell lately.
Back on, I believe it was right around December 20th, that he decided to come back with an additional round of comments to North Country Ecological Services for the preliminary jurisdictional determination. After I saw the email, I kind of sat there with a little bit of slack jaw, wondering what was going on. And I did not reply to Mr. Connell. I forwarded it on to the chairman and North Country Ecological Services, and it's just like, where are we at now? And I think my comment in there is not to be a jerk, but that we want to wait until it's gone to respond. And Dave immediately replied back that may be prudent, and North Country indicated the same. Because in their experience with other staff at the Corps of Engineers, what our latest submission to them has been approved many, many times by other staff, but for some reason it was a stumbling block for Mr. Connell. So as of right now, we have not responded, but my anticipation is I do have a call into Steve George at North Country to find out, are we just going to take the prior package we had, send it back, or do we need to make any updates? I do have some markups to address the updates that need be. And if it does come to that, we'll implement that and we can get it turned right around. But I mean, Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you've got any other thoughts on that, but I think most of us came to the realization that let's sit on it till after the first of the year.
I agree, I just think that from feedback I got from Steve George was that some of the markups he's asking for, number one, we sort of provided, or in some cases, we already deleted some that he's not requesting again. And then he came back and said, I don't want color, I want all different lines on it. And annotations and in it. So we thought that it was a little bit overboard. We just think he's been like Steve said, other agents down there took the same color markups from other companies. So why are we being selected? So everyone is glad John's done. To be fair, John has had some spirit health issues, which helped formulate his retirement, but, still, this should have been done a long time ago. This is 2.5 years in making.
It sounds like, because it is information we've already gathered, and one country has already gathered about how it is presented on a mapping is the issue.
Yes, but it is our hope that now that we've moved on to a different staff member, that the prior submission that was perceived in an inappropriate form by Mr. Connell is now appropriate. So we had Dave referred to the fact that we had black and white and grayscale on the drawings to begin with, and we were advised it wasn't readable. So, all right, let's colorize it a little bit to make it a better differentiation between these line types that he was concerned with. And then he came back and said, I don't like color, I want it in black and white. What do you want from me? So, yeah, right, exactly. And I mean, the unfortunate thing, all I can do is laugh at the moment, unfortunately.
And if I can add, the wetland issue also is permeating over to our potential tenant New Leaf, which is a solar project. They have had a wetland delineation. There is some interaction with the Army Corps of Engineering, which will be required. So just as a heads up, there's issues there too that need to be resolved before New Leaf continues with their solar project. They do, just as a side note, they're okay on the interconnect and they're okay with the lease that we've offered. There's a minor modification in one section, but other than that, things are progressing. But there are wetland issues that they need to overcome before they have confidence in executing the project and our lease with that project.
They need to do their own delineation.
They have done it. They needed to, and they have done it. They have a report, and now they're going to the Army Corps of Engineers to ask for some interpretation issues.
One of the biggest things is they're asking for a road. That's my understanding, wetlands, you can do no, it's a lay down road that you put down that doesn't disturb.
Quarter right road or a log road. They put it down. You see on utility lines that they lay down mats. Then, I mean, some of these mats could be miles long, but as they put it down, they do their work, then they take it back out. So there's really no disturbance to the ground itself.
It's like a 6x6 beach that
Could
big
be.
logging operations use.
Yes.
So thank God John's not around that for this one. Okay, anything else in delineation?
No,
Okay. Anything else for the good of the agency?
Solar.
What's that?
Solar, something that's up and coming these days. I'm told that there's on the pilots for solar. There's so much talk around there, and I'm still confused on how it all goes. But we are still in a position of granting solar pilots. And from those solar pilots still include now all special districts are paid
Correct, fully paid.
on all value, right? Okay. And how does the school work? Is there on those pilot payments, was it still the same type of, you pay full on the base?
Still paid full on the base, correct.
Yeah. And then proportion,
On the improvement, correct.
yeah,
New York State guidance is to do by megawatt. The problem is that
yeah.
there's still discussion about the method of using megawatts for assessment. And we came into I had a sort of a balloon moment that said, we're missing something. And it came down to the base payment. So let me explain. When a solar project comes in, they do one of two things, either lease land and vital it.
Yeah.
That's a base value. Now, normally when we think of infrastructure going in, we think of water, sewer, electricity, roads, mechanical development there. So that's an improvement to the base because that will never go away. When you look at a solar project, there is none of that. They're going to clear the land. They may flatten the land, they may take the wood down. So either the base will stay the same or go up. The improvements they put in just to put a gravel road in there to travel there is not considered a permanent improvement. So I was thinking about this and I finally went back and went to our assessors and to the county assessor and said, real properties, what happens to a piece of land when you just clear the land? She said, either go up in value if you de-timber the property, or it will stay the same. There's no additional value of the property. Well, if you take that $3 million out of the assessment, out of the way we calculate the base, then the improvements shrink quite a bit because it ends up being just the pipes and the concrete going in to carry the solar panels, not everything else. There's also interconnect in there that's contributing to part of the cost that really is not interconnect at the within the site. That's interconnect way back at the substation. So that's not an increase in value. So we need to sit back and stick back down. Chuck and I talked about this and really figure out how we're going to calculate these things, because if we calculate these things, and is my basic math is then the delta between what our pilot is and the taxes is different, maybe a little different. So we'll just look at that and see.
Couple things I'd like to add to that. I don't understand why a gravel road doesn't add as an improvement, because a driveway to a parcel of land adds quite a bit on an improvement. If you have a parcel of land and you add a driveway, a well, or anything of that magnitude, it really increases the value. So I would think a gravel road, I would consider as a driveway. I would think that would add something. Not sure. Now, of course, ag land, when it becomes commercial, that adds a huge value when it comes out of ag assessment and goes to commercial value.
Yeah.
And the last thing I just want to mention, because the Kingsbury supervisor, I know he's talked to Dave, talked to me, they have a different opinion because they turned down all pilots to solar and they still came, and they're like, why would we give away county sales tax dollars and mortgage tax dollars if they're coming anyway? They don't need, if there's that much money that they don't need the incentive, are we giving it just out of goodwill? What's the driving force there? So, and since we do work for all these towns and counties and we're supposed to work together, I think we have to be cognizant of that, because I think that's an important issue. Why, if certain areas don't want solar or think they've already been adulterated with it already, don't want more, why would we go out of our way to make more? I guess I have a question on that I can't in my own mind even come to a conclusion on. But I thought it was a good point that if they aren't giving anything and they're still coming, why are we just getting rid of county sales tax dollars and town mortgage tax dollars? So it was just a good point that, we need to be cognizant of that, because we're representing all these people from the two counties.
So Brian, there's a question in our application we pay a lot of attention to. The question in the application is, if you are not going to get assistance, will this project still be built?
And if the answer is no, that's fine. So do we want it to go there if the town, the county, the people, the citizens of that area don't want it? So be it, it's not built. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, but that's not in our scope, Brian. The scope and
That is in our scope.
Oh, wait a
We
minute,
represent economic
Brian,
development for the whole
hold on.
area.
Hold on. It is not in our scope to approve or disapprove the building of the project. That
Right.
is out the county and everything else. They can stop the project by not approving the plans. We shouldn't be involved in that decision. That's not part of our decision.
But on the same token, the way that question is asked, anyone would be an idiot that would write that, no, it wouldn't, it wouldn't even affect it. Because this way they're gonna qualify because they say, oh, we're not coming. I mean, it's kind of a funny question when you really stop and think about that in its entirety, for face value. If you're asking somebody, would this happen without that? Of course, they're going to say no. They're coming to you for something. They want something for nothing, basically.
Can I jump in, Mr.
Go ahead.
Chairman? One thing that's becoming very evident is every application will be different. The size of the solar project, the location, the condition of the land. We are in discussion with various solar companies and at different points of maturity. One of the latest inquiries is from a company interested to do a solar installation on a landfill. Okay, so that becomes a little bit more palatable. You also get into different jurisdictions, obviously 1 or 2 counties, but then whatever specific town is, a specific school district, and we even have an application that's in multiple school districts, two school districts. So point being, every application will be different and will take careful thought. And there's one, for example, speaking of the approval of the project itself, there's one that is not only having to deal with the planning board issue, but has to deal with the APA and their approval. Again, every application will be different and we'll just have to be very mindful of it as we carefully work through these applications.
So I appreciate that, Brian, but we again, we don't govern whether these projects are built or not. That's up to the community.
Well, but you're basically saying the same thing I am. We aren't governing it, but that little check mark, whether it would come or not, it doesn't really matter. Because if it wouldn't come and they don't come, that's so be it. If that town, municipality, county, village, whatever doesn't want it, that's fine. Why are we concerned if they say we won't come unless we get that?
I'm still.
And that's only if they're opposed. If it's something they're all on board with and totally want, I get it. But when it comes to ones that don't want certain things, and we found out in the past, I forget a solar project. Remember, United Ag came to Greenwich, and we didn't give them any pilot because we knew they were coming anyway. And they.
Well, that's not the reason, Brian.
What's that?
United Ag is retail. We can't support retail. More than 30% of the business is retail. We can't support that type of organization. That's why we turned United Ag down.
But I remember it came up.
That's the reason why we turned them down.
Well, and they could have fudged the numbers just like other ones do for us too. So I understand. I'm just saying that we need to be cognizant of it. That's all.
I'm not, as you guys have all heard, I'm not really in favor of these kind of benefits. Some of it has to do with being with my role in the private sector that was related to power gen. And there's limiting factors here. There's interconnection, right? Is there capacity in the substations to handle this stuff? The next thing is we can have all this infrastructure built up and it doesn't do us any good until we have the ability to store this energy to be able to use it in the evening when the sun isn't shining, right? So this is temporary kind of infrastructure support for the grid. And there's significant incentives, especially what the state has done. And Dave, you and I talked offline about, having solar on my home. And it's amazing how the price of solar kind of changes with the price and the incentive, right? These are all profit generating entities that build these things. They're making money. They wouldn't do it if they weren't making money. So, and for us to give incentives, I'm not sure if we're really getting the bang for our buck in our community for that. I know there's community solar, and I know some people can save some money on their bills. And I'm all for that. But 10, 20-year breaks on taxes and mortgage tax and sales tax. I wish I had time to look into it more, but there's something inside of me that's saying there's some flaws in our process. And I wish I could look at it more, but I just don't have the capacity to dive into, but there's something there.
One of the reasons we're looking at this is because the state changed our charter.
Mhm.
Our charter is now to promote renewable energy sources. So, and if we take it farther, we're gonna find out that the state's gonna step in and they're gonna direct everything on it. I know they'd rather have local control or state control over this.
One of the initiatives that Dave has, Mr. Chairman, has kicked off, which I think is really wise, is to bring in an expert on assessment of projects. We've interacted with this firm. They've given us example of the information requested. It's quite detailed. And so you'll be hearing more about this from us with future applications. So we'll have more information in understanding the complete dynamics of each project.
And that's a good thing. The more information we have, the better decision we can make. I really appreciate that too. But Mike brings a point that I hadn't given much thought. If we're building an infrastructure that the storage isn't there yet, are we setting ourselves up to where we've financed all the, well, we don't actually finance, but we've given all these benefits for all these things to be built. So then in the long term, all of a sudden there's a storage facility that we don't want, but we've set it all in motion to happen. How the hell do we turn that down when it's what we set it all up for? Even if it's bad for our community. So I guess that's a question we can't see in the future. We don't know where it's all headed.
Well, let me
We just need to be cognizant of those things. That's all.
let me just jump in, and I'm just turning the camera here. One thing that I bumped up against as I've been doing the various research on energy related issues is NYSERDA has a project going on to incentivize more storage of energy in the state. So along with the generation on the solar side and other areas, they are working on the storage. So there are a lot of different factors that are evolving at the same time. As far as the maturity path of each factor, I don't know, but just to let people know, NYSERDA is emphasizing the need for additional storage.
Chuck, do you know, Chuck, if there's any, I just wonder if there's any negative to what Chuck just said, that the storage, is there a negative to our region, our area? I mean, I know there will be more power, but is there a negative health wise and those type of things that we should be cognizant of where those are located?
Yeah, I think they're still in concept development. I mean, there's ideas, for example, of water movement from one elevation to another. So that would be something that would not necessarily be harmful. As far as other technologies, I'm honestly not sure what's out there, but that's what NYSERDA is trying to stimulate some creative solutions so there in fact will be more storage.
Okay.
Mike has the floor.
Dave, you asked a question about whether we'd rather have local control or state control. My sense is I'd rather have the state control it. Let them make the decision in terms of where this has to go and where it should go, based on the overall scope of the grid and how this needs to be distributed across the state.
You're talking about location.
I'm talking about location and incentives, right? So I'd rather the state do this, to be honest. Even though, what do we control? We either say yes or no to the incentives, and basically what we're saying is we say yes to the incentives, and we leave the local control in terms of whether they want to approve this location or not. The individual towns, they control that. We don't have anything to do with that.
We don't have anything to do with location. However, the state, if the state has their way and they're pretty well down the road, they can walk into Brian Campbell's farm and say, we want all this productive ag land, you get a solar farm.
That's going to cost them.
It doesn't matter what it costs them or not, but they can't do that. That's what's wrong. Talk to Laura Oswald. Laura has made this case for 2 years now.
My sense is our hands are going to be tied. We're going to do it no matter what. So I'd rather put that blame on the state than on this agency. Does we say yes or no?
Location, yes.
That's a good point.
On the state.
Yeah.
We can't
nothing to do
control
with
any
that.
location. Then you get into your turn.
Well, we can't deny the benefit either. is basically what we're saying, is that there's nothing within our application process, or at least from what I've heard, from what you're saying, you know, if we don't do this, the state's gonna tell us to do it. And basically, they're telling us to do it now. My sense is, take it. You guys take it, and why should we, if we have farmland, an abundance of farmland in Washington County, why should Washington County have to deal with the tax incentives and the loss of revenue? Right, that would come with that, based on our decision. I'd rather that be the state decision, the state change the tax code or whatever they have to do, just to make sure that they can fund this stuff.
That's one of the reasons why we want to get the appraisals done, so we understand what we're dealing with. We can support our case.
I understand that there's no easy way to get around this right now.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to, since I started this conversation, to help wrap it up. Thinking of, a lot of times we use taxes to offset costs of goods and services that it takes to run a community. So when a solar operation comes in, it's very passive. It gets built, it's there, it produces. And in a like sense, it converts solar energy as do forests, and you have your 480, 480A tax exemptions for your forest lands, as does pasture and crops. And for that, you can have your ag exemptions as well. So that there is noted in our tax structure already exemptions for property value because of the service it provides and the service it doesn't require.
Correct.
So solar is along in those lines as well. We are just starting out in the solar world on these larger commercials, so we get to grapple with what it is. But as far as having a certain tax break, I think it could be argued that they're worthy of it. But on how much for how long is, those are the devil in the details.
And that's why I really strongly feel when you get this appraisal done. Because they're gonna be up to date with all the codes, all the regulations. Matter of fact, they help the state write some of the things, this company help the state write some of the things they're doing, so let's see what they roll into.
So they're a ringer.
They're what?
A ringer. Like, you know, like you're playing basketball with a bunch of guys and all of a sudden it's semi-pro guy shows up right at the Y and kicks everybody's butt. These guys already have all this inside information. They know where it's going. I'm being a little facetious, right? But well, I'll keep my eyes open, my mind open, we'll see where we go.
Fair enough.
Yeah, one thing to point out is for a project, solar project to be successful, it really has a lot of steps to go through. The site selection, the interconnect, the planning board, maybe the EPA, perhaps us if we're involved in the incentives. So there, you know, there are a lot of steps. And as I mentioned earlier, every application will be very different. So I just have to see, that's the balls, I guess.
Well, just to throw a little more into that is you got to remember the difference in sizes of all these things. There's a 2.5 megawatt system in Hartford that is, they're not doing it for the goodness of their heart. Somebody's making money. And then you have somebody claiming, oh, we have to have a 20 or a 50 to make money. There's so much money in here, we can't even fathom it. And the amount we're giving them in a tax incentive, I don't think is necessary. If you've already got 10 coming, do you need 15 or 20? I'm not sure of that. And as a budget officer, it's pretty hard to say, I want to give away my sales tax and mortgage tax. So I guess that's just the way, the more that comes out, the more you hear and the more we learn. The amount of money is unfathomable, and we don't even know what it is.
And Dave makes a good point. What's the cost of their ability to generate this profit, whatever their profit margin is? And how much are they saving based on our incentives? And if they amortize it over the 10 years or 20 years for the life of their project, are we talking a couple cents a megawatt? I don't know. I'm just curious what that number is.
Well, if I could add, this is why the assessment exercise is being kicked off. So we request that specific information and we can know more. We can know the top line and the bottom line and make judgment based upon that.
Okay.
it's gonna be, anyways, I think that information itself will give the board more confidence in its decision making.
I agree. I think that the confusion is that, again, Greg said it very well, is that once they bring it in, they build it, they require no services, no maintenance services, nothing for the community, so no demands on the school, so I mean, those are some things that take in mind. I think that one of the areas that everyone has to be cautious of is that the argument that Metroplex gave to me about grading pilots. If you don't grade pilots, the company asks for pilots, you don't grade a pilot, they're gonna do Article 7 after Article 7 after Article 7, and they go to the court and say, Judge, we don't require your services. Why are we assessed and paying this much taxes? And the judge looked back and said, just like they did in GE, just like they did in other companies, is that you're right, they don't require any services. You know, we reduce your assessment next to nothing. So what does that do to a company, to companies that, a great example was Fort Edward School District. End up going, have to pay more, or Washington County back $46 million. Because the Article 7 dropped the assessment from $72 million to 36 and then to $12 million. So those things we all have to keep in mind. That's part of our goal is to help protect these companies, and that's why we spent so much time with CHBE is building the protections they couldn't read their taxes. We did have a fixed amount over 30 years. They're contractually bound to do that. And if there's changes in regulations or in the state, it doesn't affect it. So we've done that consciously with CHPE, and that was a big part of the negotiation, make sure we protect the communities from Article 7 going back and have to pay taxes. So it's a big thing.
There's one point I think though that we don't want to lose track of. Land, they don't make any more of it. Okay, that's number one. So when it's wetland, landfill, something that you can't do anything with, totally understandable. When you get to marginal land that's very rural, maybe understandable. But as we get to some of these areas where the IDA could actually be working with a company that was going to provide jobs, and it's that type of land where those type of businesses could go, saying no is not a bad thing. Because now, like you said, they don't get any services, but they're not given any jobs or anything either. And I totally agree with you on the pilot. Doesn't make, a row of beans on that. But for you to give up your sales tax and mortgage tax for the millions that are being involved, that's a big amount of money when you take a percentage of millions. That's a whole different story. But I think sometimes saying no isn't a wrong thing. I mean, we don't say no very often. But I think as these things crowd into our areas like Queensbury, Kingsbury, things like that, there's places that they're going to need for housing or need for businesses that if you've already put a solar farm on it, those aren't available. So it makes everything costlier down the road. And I think that's the part we're missing is the foresight of what is the opportunity we're
What
taking
you're
away
missing,
from
Brian,
ourselves in the future.
what you're missing, Brian, is something we have no control over. We can't tell a farmer he can't sell his land.
No. That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to giving an incentive to make sure it goes to something that will never be a business, will never be a farm, never be housing, because it's going to have this solar array on it for life. We can say no and say there's a certain amount we want, there's a certain amount we don't want. That's all I'm saying.
That's not our
more to
decision.
zoning, planning, town boards.
Dan's talking about that. That's not our position.
If you don't give the incentive, they pay the taxes, and that's fine.
It's okay. Yeah, yes.
All right.
So we have a little way to go on this.
Yeah.
A long way.
So I think the other thing people don't understand is what the 47 opt-out really is. 47 opt-out simply says that there's no automatic tax exemption there's no automatic tax exemption. You can still give pilots, you still get post benefit packages. The 47B says it's just not automatic, and that's where towns get trapped because there's a notice sent, a 60-day notice. If you haven't opted out, if you sent a 60-day notice, if the solar company sends a 60-day notice, and the community doesn't respond within 60 days, they're automatically tax exempt for 15 years. And that's where the trap goes. And the trap was there's a communities that haven't opted out. And the only way they get that if they miss that 60-day notification window, the only way they're going to get revenue from those sites is from the IDA.
Okay, so let me run one thing by Warren County because their system is set up totally different than Washington County's. In that instance, where a solar company comes in and they've not opted out or whatever, they're tax exempt. They're not tax exempt or mortgage tax exempt. And with half a year sales tax going to your towns in Warren County, how would that work? Because now they would get more money from the sales tax on a $30 million program than they would get probably out of their pilot going away. I see that's because we're all set up different and we come under different scrutiny. That's just my question. I don't know the answer to it, but I think it's something that our friends and comrades here in Warren County need to look and help us with. How does that affect you? Because I know sitting at that meeting the other night, I'm thinking, well, everyone here and two of you are from Queensbury anyway. And I'm thinking, well, if they're not opposed to it, how should I be opposed to it? Because we're working together. You're helping me with things in Washington County. I'm helping things for you in Warren County, but I don't know your exact effect to your towns, villages, and communities as compared to what they are in our county. See, in our county, the big onus would be on the county itself because we share so little sales tax. In your county, you share half of it. So that's a bigger deal. So if we go in and give a pilot where we gave up your sales tax, that whatever that total number is, half of that was your towns and half of it was your county. So it just makes a different approach. And when we're working together, we collectively have to know those things. And I don't know the answer to that. I've been here a long time. And so I don't know if you guys have meshed them together. And for Chuck coming in, he doesn't realize probably what I'm like. He probably knows what I'm talking about, but doesn't know the actual ins and outs of the different ways we put out our sales tax. That's a significant thing. So yeah, giving a pilot and all that's fine. I'm not sure we should give away the sales tax, and the mortgage tax is my bigger concern because that effect on the town and the county may be far more than what the pilot is.
So boil it down because you become very loquacious, Brian, sometimes. What you're saying is we should reconsider giving the sales tax or the mortgage tax and continue with the pilot.
That's a possibility, but that's what I mean. We need to look at the whole thing. That might be the answer. I just don't know. It's just a different avenue. And I'm sure Craig knows a lot more about how his sales tax works in Warren County than I do. And because they pass so much on to the towns, we pass very little on to the towns. So to us, when we do it, we're doing it countywide, but the towns are unhappy just because they're losing their mortgage tax season. But yeah, it's just it's a different ball of wax between the two counties, but we are jointly together. We need to be cognizant of what we're doing to each county when we do these things and not just saying, oh, well, it looks good on the surface, but what's it really do? That's what we got to dig into.
TBD. To be continued.
Okay.
He may not have heard that. Mr. Wild said TBD.
Too bad, Daniel Campbell.
Well, I've already heard of TDI, so I guess to be determined, I can figure that one out too.
Okay,
I'm with you, Brian.
all right. Good discussion. Moving forward. So does everyone understand 47B means you can't get pilots?
Yeah.
Does not mean you can't get pilots. It simply means you don't get an automatic tax deduction. You miss that 60-day window. That's the only thing that means. And I think a lot of people are confused about that. And that's been litigated in court. So. Okay, thank you all. By the way, we're planning a holiday party after our January 17th meeting up at the Tankard in Fort William Henry. Ally's gonna get the invitations out. So we can, and we usually have, those don't know, we usually had a holiday party, we haven't had one in 3 years.
Right,
And FNBF goes on,
yeah.
FNBF does the party for us, we just invite people and go and attend.
So is this a joint COVID relief party?
You want what?
COVID.
COVID relief.
All right, Brian. I can't stand 2 days yet. Motion by Dan, second. Great. All in favor? Aye. Carrie? So what's the,
You want to?
all right,
I was. If the Senate's for my owners. Not have for a meeting on day.
No, I see Ally.
Richard?